In this episode, we're talking with Maurice. Maurice is a former Air Force special agent, management consultant, and midnight police officer, all of which somehow he did at the same time. This guy does it all. He's now a managing partner for a real estate private equity firm with $250 million in assets under management, and he also does personal coaching. He's traveled all over the world, currently splitting time between Maryland and Lebanon. Yet despite all of that, one of the coolest things about him is his approach to life in general, which we dive into quite a bit. So with that, let's get to this episode with Maurice Philogene. Most people you talk to when transitioning out of the military have never actually transitioned out themselves. You're probably getting a bunch of opinions from people who plan on staying in until retirement and have no idea how to actually show empathy for your situation. This podcast is about providing fresh perspectives and a front row seat for conversations with successful veterans doing big things after leaving the military. Well, Maurice, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us today. I'd love to start off by can you just go into a little bit of your background and the military experience as well? What did you do in the military?
I got a heavy background. So military wise, I'm retired now. I retired as lieutenant colonel back in 2019. Actually, I started Navy. I always forget that I started Navy, but for me, military. My family's not a military family. My family, Haitian immigrant family, and I just needed a way to pay for school. And fortunately, my mom was smart enough to get me going through the Naval Academy, where I got in. I wanted to play regular football, although the Naval Academy has a really good program. So I ended up at UVA with a Navy ROTC scholarship, flipped it to Air Force second year because they gave 100% for engineers and minorities, which I'm both. And then I entered the service through the National Guard because the year I got out in 97, there were too many officers coming out nationwide. They gave you options. So from an Army perspective, I was CID. From an Air Force perspective, that's called OSI. Navy, it's NCIS. So I was a special agent just about my entire career. Ran field offices all over the world, fugitive retrievals, murders, espionage, intelligence cases, terrorism, et cetera, et cetera. So I was primarily in the reserves the entire time, but I did 10 years worth of active duty. That's how much I volunteered. And then outside of the military, 25 years as an executive at a global consulting firm, 15 years as a midnight police officer. And then I've always been a real estate investor and entrepreneur. Started my own private equity firm. We have about $250 million worth of real estate. And I'm an avid traveler and just a lot going on. But that's the military side of it anyway.
Running the field offices throughout the world, was that what kind of gave you your travel itch? Or I know I heard a story that you told previously about traveling to France when you were in your teens.
Yeah.
What was it that kind of gave you the travel itch? I know you've traveled extensively. How did that start?
Yeah, it was that. So I've now been to 99 countries, over 400 times. I don't count, nor do I want to see all 196 countries. That was never the intent. It's just that when I was 15, I traveled around France with the family of an exchange student that stayed with me in Boston the previous year. So this is 1990. It changed my life as an inner city knucklehead kid. It just opened me up to the world is a lot bigger than Boston, the crap that I was doing. And when I got to my 20s, I found personal finance. I found the concept of passive income, being able to generate income, divorced from your need to physically be somewhere. It led me to real estate. When I figured that out relative to real estate, my thought process was, look, man, if I can generate passive income in my life, then I can generate time. If I can generate time, I can go back to when I was 15 and have those kinds of poignant experiences. I just got very lucky understanding very early in life that life is not about money. It's about relationships and experiences. And one of the ways you can do it is by travel, not for the sake of travel. I don't travel like a tourist. I travel to meet people like Griffin and Jack, or roll out to Hawaii to have lunch with my man Jack, or there's always some component to it, but travel has been a big piece. But I leveraged the military service to do more of it. Luxembourg, Germany, 10 countries in Africa, Turkey, Lebanon, several field offices in the US. And then same thing with my consulting career. I always took the overseas assignments. And then, like the other 80% was just me personally, my own personal value system. But that's kind of how it all came about because of that trip.
One of the things I picked up from your podcast was just like live and work to where you don't need a vacation.
Yeah.
And I also I heard this, not to caveat, but there was a quote that I heard that it was the master in the art of living. And I
Hmm.
literally heard it right when I started listening to your podcast. And I feel like you are probably the quintessential example of this. The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his information and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does. And I think that it just seems like what I'm picking up from listening to how you communicate with people, that's the way that you live your life. Your work isn't just work. Your play isn't just play. You kind of have morphed into this, just enjoyment of life, and you've created options and opportunities for yourself through that sort of mindset. And I absolutely love that. So you're a big inspiration. And that's, I think, a great way to
Wow.
live, right?
Thank you for saying that. That makes me happy. A lot of what I'm going to say on the podcast today, or anything you've ever heard me say, is probably more in reflection because when I went on my journey in my 20s and early 30s, I had a lot of entrepreneurial depression of like building businesses and why is everybody going left, but my spirit and my God keeps telling me to go right. It wasn't easy by any means. However, I'm going to be 49 on Saturday. I still get, are you in your 30s? Because I have not, maybe because of how I look, because I'm still in the gym and all that. And I went on a fitness journey where I lost 35 pounds and I'm back to deadlifting heavy stuff. But it's not that. It's that I really quickly understood that life is not about money. It's relationships and experiences. And if you can build a lifestyle where you don't need a vacation, you've beat the system. I haven't taken a quote unquote vacation in almost 10 years. I don't need to. When I was a senior executive and I was trying to leave my company to go be a police officer because I was on active duty. I was chasing fugitives around the world. I was finding missing kids. I was shaking hands with foreign dignitaries and presidents and protecting them and leading my troops and stuff. And then I went back to corporate when I got off active duty after a 2-year stint. And I'm like trying to make companies money. It really didn't sit well with me at all. So I ended up being a street cop, but I found a way to do both of it. I'm not afraid of bullets. I'm not afraid of guns. I'm not afraid of death. It's just a part of life. And I'm not saying that in a glory sense. It's just I'm around it all the time. So it doesn't really phase me. The one thing I'm afraid of is regret. So instead of adopting and accepting the default nature of status quo, what is the one thing you are going to be? What is the one place you are going to live? I said, absolutely not. And I created my own definition of success and just started doing and course correcting along the way with this level of reckless abandon that I look back on it and I'm like, man, how was 23-year-old me smart enough to take that type of mindset? I'm grateful to him. And every time I think about that kid and the fact that he was alone in the Fairfax County Library, usually on Saturdays in aisle 6 reading business books when all the fellas was going out, it drives me to emotion, man, because I remember sitting there like, am I weird? Why is nobody here with me? Everybody's out. I don't know. It's just one of those things. But yeah, if you can, and that's what I do with lifestyle design and my platform, Try Life On. If you can build a lifestyle specifically around time freedom, financial freedom, geographic freedom, freedom of purpose, me being a police officer, and building amazing relationships with folks like yourself, then you've created a framework for a lifestyle that you will never need a vacation from, man. And I have perfected it. I'm not saying it's right for everybody else, but it's right for me. I've been practicing my lifestyle for a very long time, so I'm a master at my own lifestyle. So I appreciate what you just said.
Another thing I've been incredibly impressed by seeing you speak and the work that you're doing
Yeah.
is you don't let the goalposts keep moving. And that's probably one of the hardest things for anyone to do. And I'm just curious, like, is there something about you aside from what you've already mentioned? Is there or is there some kind of realization you came to along the way that helps
Yeah.
you be okay with? Because, the one thing no billionaire will ever have is enough. And it's like, Maurice has enough.
Oh, I
How
see
did
what you're
you,
saying. Yeah.
how have you come to that ability to keep the goalposts from moving? Because I think getting out of the military, that's a common struggle. They're used to a ladder to climb. They're used to a badge to achieve or a school to graduate from. And then you get out and it's like, let's keep on climbing and let's keep on just chasing the next thing. But how do you combat that?
Well, it happened. I understand what you're saying, and there are two instances that I will express to you. but it happened in some kind of intrinsic, organic way for me. Isn't that what formal education does, though, brother? Because think
100%.
about it. Us three, if we was going to the same high school, Griffin, Jack, and Mo going to the same high school, I got to compete with you to be the MVP. I got to compete with you to get into the AP classes. I got to compete with you to be the prom king. I got to compete with you to be the cool kid. Now I got to compete with you because you're going to Yale and only the good kids go to the Ivy League schools and the other kids go to the community colleges. And I'm a supporter of formal education. My dad is a 30-year educator of the Boston school system. My mom is a 22-year guidance counselor. But formal education taught us to compete with each other constantly. So you compete in high school, you compete in college, and it translates to the work world where me, Griffin, and Jack are now competing for the executive vice president position, right? Okay, so now Griffin and Jack and Mo are out at the happy hour trying to talk to the senior executive so we can get an edge. Meanwhile, our wives and our kids are waiting back at the house to have our time. All of that is somebody else's definition of success. It clicked to me in 2013. Ready? Analyst to consultant, consultant to manager, manager to senior manager. And after senior manager, you enter the track for partner. But when I got to senior manager in 2013, and I post about this sometimes, I was like, man, this shit don't make sense. Like I'm making money, but the goalpost keeps moving. I'm not getting happier. I'm not getting more financial freedom. This is not right. So when my boss asked me to enter the partner track, I started declining it because I was like, if I make partner, or when I got to lieutenant colonel, one of the reasons I didn't go for full board colonel is because I like being in the field. I'm a field guy. And my next assignment was going to be headquarters. Now you can always say that, look, you have especially in the military, you have a responsibility to go back to headquarters, take all that experience and translate it into policy, which will help the agency continue further. I get that. But I also know who I am. Chasing full bird was going to do me no good at all. Even though I had a line to get it, it was just going to do me no good. It was the same thing in the consulting world. I turned down the partner track 4 times because it was going to cost me an extra 20 to 40 hours a week. And I'm like, man, I'm taking these 2 checks systematically. I'm investing it in real estate. I'm creating streams of income outside of work. I would rather use this employment. I would rather leverage it for the experiences and skills it's going to give me than chase somebody else's definition of success. So when you talk about goalpost, no different in my real estate space. We got 250 million in assets under management. We could go to $1 billion. We have a track to do it. But if I double my net worth, am I going to be doubly happy? I'm going to take on more responsibility, more and more and more, when I'm actually living life the way that I want to live now. It makes no sense. So I've just turned everything off. I'd rather plug in, spend more time with my kids, maybe have some more kids later in life, swim in the Mediterranean like I do all the time, come down to the Pacific. Why are we chasing other people's definition when we should be defining our own?
I think that message, that last sentence, is so applicable to those who are thinking of transitioning out of the military, because you are constantly surrounded by people who chose to stay in. Mm-hmm. So their definition of success for them is to stay in the military and to just basically get to 20 or beyond and earn that paycheck. Whereas that might not be the definition of success for every single person's family or themselves specifically. So with a follow-up question I have for you is, like, as far as your transition, what advice would you have to them for if they're seeing the transition as an increase to their risk, where as staying in might be that steady paycheck, that guaranteed health care, but transitioning out might be seen as a risk?
First of all, I want to make it clear that when I transitioned out, I didn't want to leave. October 6th, 2019, I was sitting in my car in Washington, D.C., and at 5 p.m. I started crying because I knew I had transitioned to retired. That was not a good day. So my statement is from someone who loves the military. I miss it. And when I retired, I didn't go back on a base because I couldn't face seeing people in uniform. A friend of mine's dad passed, and he was in 06 in the Coast Guard, and I tried to put on a uniform and I couldn't do it. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to answer your question in the context of somebody who asked me the same question when he was transitioning. So my boy John, who's on LinkedIn, John Ballinger, you guys should interview him if you haven't already, but he was a Marine. He's a Marine, and he was Marine One pilot, so presidential helicopter pilot, John Ballinger. And he found me on LinkedIn. We got to talking because he wanted to do real estate and stuff. And he started talking to me about lifestyle design and the way that I've crafted my life to be mobile. I don't have employees, but I have systems and processes and 2,000 apartments and all this. And he said, I'm thinking about getting a contracting job in DC. And I said, why? He said, well, because that's what most people do. They get the contracting job, they get a good six-figure salary. And I said, is that going to make you happy? He said, nah, I think I would rather be with friends and family back in Colorado and live an outdoorsy life. I said, do that. Because what you just told me was programming that you receive from all of the other officers and men and women that you serve with is pure programming. You're saying you're going to get a contracting job because that's what everybody else does. When your gut, your spirit, your God, your universe, your whatever it is for you is telling you, I want to be with my friends and my family, and I want to be able to take walks with granola bars in my pocket. What are we doing? We taking other people's definition of success and applying it to our life. So people who are transitioning out, what I would tell you is find what makes sense for you. Don't just because you have a clearance, now I'm going to go into the clearance world and make some more money. You're going to make money right until you're 68 years old and realize that you missed the whole boat. Keep making money for the sake of making money and missing life. No, take this awesome military career. Take all the skills you've gained from it, but also take the critical thinking that they gave us and realize life is short. We know that there's servicemen and women who never came back. If they could do it all over again and they had a chance to live again, you think they're going to sit and do a job that because someone said that's the next thing to do? Or would they go plug into life the way that they should? Or go follow a passion, become a street cop, become a baker, become a painter, go to live in Hawaii, live in Lebanon the way that I do? What are we doing? We are just allowing ourselves to just be, I don't want to say manipulated, man, but we have so much programming that if you can just pause for a second and realize that we are neuroplastic people, we can change our mindset. We can go a different direction. The key is to listen to podcasts like this and information like this. And when you feel that gut feeling inside of you because someone's saying something on that podcast that's making you feel some kind of way, now you know your spirit is talking to you. And that's probably the thing you should be following. Not just, yeah, man, I'm going to go get a contracting job in DC because that's what everybody tells us to do. So that would be my advice to people, man. You got to follow your gut, not just follow the herd.
That's good, man. I think the three of us probably have a bias towards real estate. All three of us have invested in real estate, both on the side while serving in the military and in a full-time capacity as well. What do you think, given the skills that most folks develop in the military, what do you think is a good, whether it's real estate or otherwise, a good way for them to start building wealth, start building some sort of, I don't think passive income is a real thing, but semi-passive income to allow them to really pursue passions following their service time?
Listen, I'm going to put the careers aside because it really doesn't matter. Not from my perspective. What matters is the lifestyle that you want. What matters is the way that you want to feel on a day-to-day basis. All we're doing with these employments and our responsibilities is trying to, when people are like, what job should I do? You should do the thing that's going to make you the happiest, is what I say. Now, I get that we got to generate wealth. And what I tell people is you have three of the most valuable, powerful things in the world. Two of them are two paychecks that show up on the 1st and the 15th in every month. And then there are these things called assets that you can buy. It could be a stock. It could be fractional gold. It could be real estate, which I prefer because of the tax benefits and the cash flow and things of that nature, and just the business aspect of it. It could be businesses, but it also could be lifestyle. It could be self-education. It could be seminars. Whatever you do at some point in life, so it's not the job, because at some point in life, the job is going to tell you, we don't need you no more. Or you're going to say, I don't want to do it no more. Or you're just going to be too old and too tired. So whatever it is you choose to do, please just buy any kind of asset along the way, because it's going to be down the road that those assets take care of you. So now in my case, I bought my first real estate investment property when I was 26 years old in August of 2002. That was my first cash flow, passive, semi-passive, whatever we want to call it, doesn't matter. First cash flow. By the time I left corporate in November of 2021, I had maybe 2,100 or 2,200 sources of some relative cash. Now, it didn't matter if it was 5 cents, 30 cents, $30, $300, or $3,000 a month. They were there. Those are the things that give you the ability to now choose what it is that you want to be and what it is that you want to do. Everybody is looking for what is the job that is going. You can do whatever you want, just as long as do the job, but just buy assets along the road such that when career highway comes to an end, you just roll out on exit 41. You just keep going. I think people look at it a little bit off. I think people are looking at the job as the thing that's going to save you. Nah, man, any job, do something that makes you happy. But as you're doing that thing, just systematically save some money on the side and start buying these little assets along the way. And this is the problem with the society today. Everybody's like, Uber is instant, Netflix is instant, Amazon delivers to your house whenever you want to. Everything is so effing instant. My financial freedom journey took me 14 years to get to a point where I had more money coming in from real estate than from work. But I was systematic about it. Nobody's patient anymore. Everybody wants to hit the lottery. But even if you hit the lottery, you haven't built up the skills to maintain it or multiply it anyway. I think you can do whatever you want, but you should just be buying assets along the way. That's how I coach the people that I work with.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes complete sense. I think it's one of the easiest things and one of the hardest things to do, to just pull that trigger or that lever, right? And decide to start doing that. It is very easy, but there's a lot of sacrifice that comes along with that. So whether it's your time, it goes back to the quote at the beginning, your time and the enjoyment of what you're doing. The enjoyment needs to come from something that's going to further your path as to what you actually want to do. Not that short term, that TikTok, that, the eating too much food or what have you. There's a lot of things that are short term really great and feel good, but long term, they might not be supporting those goals that you have. So right. It's been a recurring theme of what we've been talking about the last couple episodes is whatever that goal is. And to your point, it doesn't matter what the goal is. Whatever you think the goal is, you actually have to action the steps that's going to be required to reach that goal. And if you can make that choice, it's the easiest and hardest thing to do. Make that choice. Your actions need to actually pursue that goal.
I have become very fascinated with the human mind in the past 2 years after finding a book called Power of the Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy that was written in 1963. Beyond that book, I've come to understand that our brains are very malleable, but our brains are things that try to keep us safe. You and I are saying these amazing things, Jack, about trying to do something that is going to secure you for the future, but it's uncomfortable. It's not something that they learned or any of us learned in formal education. Remember, everything about formal education has been rammed into our heads for 20 years. We are programmed from those kinds of things. There's one answer, there's right and wrong, there's sign this permission slip, there's you get this title, you are deemed as successful. What we're asking people to do now in this conversation is, listen, you know that 20 years and 30 years that you got and that now you've been executing it for 10, 15 years in the military to climb up the ladder because that's the thing of success? Nah. Actually, what we're saying is, no, now think a little bit different, get entrepreneurial and do something radically different. And it's hard for people. I don't blame people. I blame all of us. I blame our system. Now, the system is designed to push out employees. That's fine. There's a certain percentage of the population that will all be employees, and we need employees. I was a police officer. I wanted to be an employee. That's part of me giving to our societal structure. But folks have got to realize that they can think and act differently. And that's the key. Now, once people are aware, so again, people are going to hear this on this podcast and be like, oh man, I can do some stuff. Then it's on them. They've got to take action, like you say. You can give people all the information in the world. There's got to be some level of self-motivation that comes from some why or some down deep. And my point to people is my why is pretty much, I don't do regret. I'm freaked out by regret. I don't want to be 75 and be like, man, I should have did it when I could have, would have, should have, all that type of stuff. So it's tough for people though, man. I never want to get on a podcast and be like, man, it's so easy to be an entrepreneur. No, it's not. We weren't taught any of this stuff. It's just that I kept going to that stupid library, which I'm very grateful for. And it rewired me. And I was like, nah, this feels better. So I just went that way, but it's tough for people.
Do you have any frameworks around if they have an itch to do something, they have an itch to do the less conventional, but they just keep on consuming information, but they haven't taken the step. How would you coach them to take that step?
In my coaching, there is a Tri-Life-Arm principle called just do and course correct along the way. There is an infinite number of inputs that you can uncover when you are doing due diligence on stuff, and it will go forever. At some point, you have to understand that you have enough information and it moves from diligence to just F it. You just got to do and course correct along the way. There is no, I say this statement with radical confidence. There is no successful person out there, and I don't mean money as success, I just in any form of success. There is no successful out there person who knew everything they were doing before they got into it. None. Not even the four-star generals. They don't know everything that they're doing. They have to rely on us, right? They got to reach down to us and be like, what do I do? Nobody knows. So you get just enough information, you stop and you just do and course correct along the way. That's how I got into coffee shops. That's how I own clubs, how I own restaurants, how I did real estate. But nowadays, when I have a little bit more economic ability, I go to a different principle, which is find a who versus thinking about the what forever. I wanted to be a developer in the Mediterranean because I want to build a lifestyle there. So I found a who. Somebody who is developing in the Mediterranean. I found a way to add value to my boy's life. And now we're on our third project. Or if I need something else, I'll pay for a mentor. I don't reinvent the wheel. There are people out there who have done this stuff. People get so anxious about paying for coaches and stuff. A coach, if it's the right coach, just beelines you to the answer. You're not going to have a problem if you find the right coach. So it's doing and course correcting along the way. And then if you're inclined, then it's finding a who versus thinking about the what forever.
I love the idea of iterating along the way, just making the most important next step and then course correcting as you're going down that route.
Yeah,
because
it's like building the plane on the way down.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks fall into the trap of, similar with the military, most get in thinking they're going to be in for a while. They kind of approach life after the military the same way, thinking that when they sign with X company or when they sign up for whatever path they choose, that it's like a decade of signing their life away. And that's just not the case at all. And I've fallen in that same trap. It's a good loyalty that people have as well. I don't want to discount loyalty, but you're not signing your life to 10 years with a company. You can really try life on, try different paths, and iterate and continue learning about what you truly do want and continue pursuing that rather than feeling stuck in a rut of a particular career field.
Yeah, man. I absolutely agree. I hope people receive that.
Yeah, I love that. I think I did want to kind of go back and ask you a bit of a specific and just offer some advice to people who are doing that transition, because that's really what the crux of this podcast is. How much time were you putting towards, you mentioned just going to the library and studying and becoming an entrepreneur through self-teaching. How much time were you really putting towards that? And if somebody was interested in, while active duty, making that transition and trying to become self-taught, would you have any recommendations for specific books or specific things that they should pursue?
It all depends on people's why and what they are interested in, And I'm not a proponent of chase money. When you chase money, it runs. You guys asked the right question of me in the beginning, which was, I did that travel when I was 15 and I found the financial stuff. And that's how I ended up in the real estate space, to go get more of those life experiences. So my why was the right thing. You have to be committed to yourself. I think we are all perfectionists and we will try and do 100% of the things 100% of the time because that's what school told us to do, to be in the AP class, to kill it. I think we can be doing the 20% of important things to get the 80% of result, which is 9 times out of 10 enough, unless we're in life-threatening situations on the military or police side. And then save the rest of time to focus on these outside endeavors, because your life is beyond the military. It's just one chapter. I miss the military, but I can't feel it as much as I used to, right? My prime time was, thank you, military, for this. In my 3 careers, military, police, and consulting, when I was doing it all at the same time, I was always 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. doing something. Even if I was in a patrol car, I was doing this. But my prime time was always 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. It still is today. That's 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 20 hours a week. That's 80 hours a month. That's 960 hours a year. That's 1.5 months that you have created to work on exactly what Griffin and Jack are talking about. Don't tell me you don't have time. You have time. You lack commitment to yourself on whatever it is. If you add a Saturday and Sunday block to that, you have created 2 months of time, 14 months, which is why now I realize that I did something that was Kobe-like, but I didn't realize I was doing something Kobe like, because Kobe's my guy. There's this meme of Kobe, or this interview of Kobe, when he talks about the fact that he would work out from 4 to 6, then he would eat breakfast, then he would go work out from like 11 to 1, then he would go do family stuff, then he would work out from 4 to 6. Okay. But everybody else was doing the 2 workouts in the afternoon. So he had that 1 workout in the morning. But because that time compounded on itself over his 20 years of playing basketball, nobody could ever catch him. I couldn't be caught. How did you start all the business? Because I was creating time. But when did you do it? Sometimes I was in a patrol car. Sometimes I was at the consulting office, but then I would work during lunchtime. Sometimes the fellas would go out. For every time, 5 times the fellas went out, I went out once. I was committed to it. So when people were like, oh, I don't have time. No, especially you, military member, with your discipline, be disciplined for the mission of your service. I get it. But also be disciplined for your life. You got 28,000 days in the average 80-year lifetime, and we're out here posturing for positions. Come on, man. Be committed to yourself too. So doesn't matter. Real estate, gold, starting a business, pottery, being a better dad, don't care. Just put time to it and understand that time compounds and not everything is going to be instant.
Well said. Was there a point that you felt like you transitioned from, you mentioned working over lunches, working I know you still work 4 to 8, but kind of like you're putting in the work that others weren't.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a bit of a, not that you aren't doing that now, but there's been a transition between doing that early on, kind of building wealth, building your passive income of financial freedom, and to where you are now, where you are optimizing for lifestyle. Was there a transition there where you hit a point where you could think in that way, or like how do you balance those two, kind of grinding and then optimizing for lifestyle kind of juxtapositions?
Yeah, the optimizing for lifestyle came out of more of a spiritual journey than it did I hit some point, and I will explain that. But when I was 41, so I'm 49 now. So when I was 41, I remember I hadn't looked in my bank account for months. I was still working the 3 careers. Real estate money was coming in. And I was like, oh, shit. And I looked, and my company had paid me for like 6 months, and I never even used the money. That's when I realized I had made, and mind you, I'm generally fiscally responsible, except for when it comes to travel. My comfort matters to me, but I'm not a bit like, I drive a '05 that's paid off. My house is paid off. Like, I'm not a big spender, but I hit this inflection point, and this is what I mean by the compounding. My net worth and even my cash flow was just like this very steady Eddie thing. And then over the years, what was happening, I kept buying these little single family houses. When some of them would appreciate, I would sell a few of them and then take the equity and use the equity along with my paychecks to pay off the other ones, right? So then all of a sudden I have more cash flow coming in plus my paychecks, and you just press repeat. So I'm doing this for like, I don't know, 17 years, 16 years. And all of a sudden one day I noticed that my net worth was doing this. And I was like, what the hell? So I went to go look at it, like truly look at it and understand what was going on. I was like, oh, I had no idea that the compounding had hit like that. None. Because everything started appreciating all of a sudden, and all this cash flow started coming. So I knew something was going on there, and I knew I was okay. Here's the funny thing. I didn't quit my jobs. I enjoyed my work. I love being a police officer, man. I struggled because some of my old shift mates are still out on the road. I want to back them up. I was optimizing for life experiences back then. But what's happening now is I have been spending a lot of time between Maryland and the Mideast. I split my time between Maryland and Lebanon right now. I love the Mediterranean. I feel good there. Like, I usually get up at 5 a.m. I'm in the sea by like 5:15, drinking coffee and all that type of stuff. From a spiritual perspective, I'm like, I have enough. And I'm not saying I'm filthy. I'm okay. But you are going to chase this stuff to what end? When does this insatiable appetite for constant growth ever stop, such that you are truly plugged into life and planet as your maker, or whoever you do or don't believe in wanted you to? If I have the resources available to take care of my 2 kids, myself, even my parents and my brother, and I'm out there taking more risk with more investors' money, to do what? To prove what to who? That's like me trying to get to the AP class again. So when I got to 2,000 units on the multifamily side, someone was asking me in a conference when I was speaking, man, you're going to get to 10,000 units. I'm like, no, I don't want any part of that. we have enough. Now I have goals related to society and I want to be able to stroke like seven-figure checks to impact society in meaningful ways. So those goals, I need to do a few things to try and get to them. But the rest of it, it's just like you said, I'm not chasing goalposts. I'm chasing life. I'm chasing the fact that my boy was laughing at me yesterday. You guys will appreciate this. Outside my farmhouse here in Maryland, there's a bird that's black and yellow that lands on this sunflower patch that I have in front of my house every morning around 6:45 in the morning. It's the same bird. And my boy Billy, who lives in Barcelona, was like, "Did you hear what you just said?" Yes, because I've kind of shut off like, oh, I'm after this business stuff to much more of I want to pay attention to what's happening in life. You know what I mean? And I'm picking up detail because I do this thing called information diets and mental diets. I don't absorb negativity. I don't watch the news. I don't watch bad movies. I don't, nothing. There's just beauty in my mind and I can see it. Why am I going to go chase more money? For what? To do what? I don't know. I think there's a point where you should realize how fortunate you are, give back to as many people as you can, and enjoy the fact that you are still alive when other people are not. That's just kind of where I am. I'm not waiting till 65. That ain't happening. It's happening right now.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. One of the things that I absolutely love that you said was if you chase money, it's going to run from you. And that's the same sort of thing. You know, this life of abundance doesn't come from wanting it. I think it's like Oprah that said that. Like
Yeah.
she just created it. It wasn't she wanted it so bad. It was just the life of abundance comes from attraction and
Yeah.
knowing what you want. And I think again, you're an incredible example of that. And I think we all aspire to be that way.
Yeah, it's nice, man.
We do have one specific thing that we ask every single guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's an ask and a give. So we can start with if you have one ask for our listeners or for really anybody out there. What is your ask? How can somebody help you, pursue your endeavors, or what are you looking for somebody that might be able to have an opportunity to connect with you?
First of all, I told you I struggled when I left the military and the police, and I think part of the reason why I struggled is because I lost the community that I was serving. So I'm just a service guy. We talked about this earlier, but one of my purposes is to be loved by community. So I'm always trying to like find ways to impact people. It just makes me feel good. I'm selfish about it, but I don't care. Like I like helping people. So I started Try Life On, all about lifestyle design, building lifestyle. You don't need a vacation from. I created a platform, trylifeon.com. I created a podcast for it, introducing people to lifestyle businesses, Try Life On principles, how people are living around the world, how people are creating businesses, but more so how people are making their extraordinary ordinary and how people are designing their lives. My ask would be for folks to check it out and to connect people to it. And if you are really into, look, man, I want to plug into life, Maurice, then be good to yourself and truly read the newsletters that I put out. Because, man, I rack my brain to put out these newsletters. It's not to attract clients. I do coach, but that's not why I'm doing it. It's because that 23-year-old kid did that by himself for 15 years. And it wasn't fun. There was times I wasn't sleeping. There was times I was lonely. There was times I thought I was odd. It was weird. But now that I have this platform, many of the people who used to be like, what's wrong with you? And now they're like, how did you do that? I take the time to write everything down that I can to put it out. So my ask would be, give that stuff a shot. If I can help you, I can always be reached at maurice@trylifeon.com. And it's genuine, man. I'm coming from a genuine place of trying to help people. I know I'm helping a lot of people because I get a lot of messages and stuff, but give me a shot, read that stuff and listen to the podcast. And I got no agenda except to help people.
That's great. And then one give as well.
Well, I'll do two because it's related. It's the two Try Life On principles that I've talked about. The first and overarching one is that status quo is a default language we do not have to follow. The Matrix was not a movie, it was a documentary. It's okay to be the executive vice president of your department. If that's what you want to do, then that's what you want to do. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to be concerned about the opinions of neighbors, peers, coworkers, and even your family telling you what to do, where to be, how to live. Man, if I would have followed my family's financial blueprint of make money, save it, because my parents are an immigrant family and I understand where they came from, I wouldn't be where I am today. And that's relative. That's not comparing to other people. It's just my ability to take care of my own family. Now my parents are like, that's good. Status quo is a default language you do not have to follow, but I want to highly encourage people to understand the concept, and it's in the newsletters. Understand the concept that life is this thing that we practice. There is no destination. You get better at it over time. I have coaching students right now out practicing legit. My one of my good friends just came back from Jamaica. She and her husband practiced living in Jamaica and building this dual lifestyle between Jamaica and Maryland because I said, you're not going to Jamaica to be on vacation. That's not what this is. You're going there to practice life, to practice a lifestyle. How do we walk to the grocery store? Where would the kids go to school? What flights are the best to fly direct? Is it on this day or this day? Let's ask questions at the airport to figure out, is it on Tuesday or Wednesday where there's the least amount of volume of people coming through the airport? So, you remember I told you that life is a feeling? They felt it. And now they're hooked. They have a why. They want to create this dynamic for them and their twins of living between the US and da-da-da. And now they're going to work on virtual work and all that type of stuff. Life is something to be practiced. I hope you do it because status quo is something you do not have to follow. You can, there's nothing wrong with it, but you should be making a conscious decision, not just defaulting to it.
My wife, we're both from Wisconsin, and we just visited Wisconsin recently for about 2 weeks, and it created a deep desire. Now, Wisconsin isn't as exotic as maybe some other places
Madison
live,
is.
but yeah, oh yeah, cheese curds, super exotic. But we're trying to figure out how we can balance our hub here in Hawaii and go back there for a few months out of the year and live there because that's where family is. It makes sense for the summer. We've got school figured out here, and with little kids, it might be a little bit more difficult, but we're really trying to pull the trigger, and hopefully next summer is when we'll start that because we kind of did exactly what you're talking about. We did 2 weeks. It was just a vacation, but we were really trying to figure out if it's possible to kind of split our time in a way between the two locations. And you've been the impetus for some of those discussions.
Oh man, that's
so
great.
To speak. So
that's great. And it doesn't need to, like I say, Jamaica or Lebanon and all, like, forget that. I don't care if it's DC and Philly. It doesn't matter. So what I would tell you and your amazing wife is the next time you go, you look at it from the perspective that I just suggested, which is we're going to go practice this. It's not let's go on vacation. It's let's go practice this. I wouldn't wait till next summer. If I was you, I have an 11-year-old, but he was younger at one point, and then I have a 24-year-old from previous. I pull him from school. It's a blocker to your desired lifestyle. So what I told the principal was, she was like, well, you're not supposed to pull him because he's supposed to be here a certain amount of days. I said, listen, you just taught the entire school system for 2 years virtually. Don't tell me that I can't pull the kid from school for 2 weeks so he can go practice his Spanish in Puerto Rico so we can go figure some life stuff out. No. Status quo is a default language I refuse to follow. So if you and your wife want to create that dynamic, you don't wait. You say, just like this. This is for military people too, because military people are programmed a certain way too, because that's just how we're our nature. Your family is a geographically free family right now. Your job is to figure out the blockers that are keeping you from going. Is it mail? Then virtualize your mail. Is it your job? Then get a virtual one or present your current employer a solution to support, not a problem to solve. Is it how are we going to travel with the kids? Great. Next month on Tuesday, we're going to pull the kids and we are going to practice how we're going to fly on this regional carrier. It's going to be expensive the first time, but the next time we practice it, 3 months later, it's going to get less expensive because we're going to get better. And you start to realize that the same practice we was putting in on a football field in high school is the same practice we can put in for lifestyle. And instead of going out to the restaurant on a weekend and spending $400 with the family and the grandparents and all that, no, let's use that $400 to go practice our lifestyle, getting from this place to this place. And how are we going to do it? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's a mindset shift of, no, life is it's a rhythm. It's this thing. You can actually feel it and practice it and go after it and stuff. So I give you those suggestions.
That's amazing. Well, Maurice, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for being willing to come on here and just any parting thoughts or final words to folks transitioning from the military.
First of all, God bless you. Thank you for your service. I miss you guys. For those of us who love the service, it's a hard transition. And feel those emotions. Get mental health support while you're transitioning to the extent that you need it. I love the VA. I spend time with the mental health folks at the VA all the time. I like talking about my previous military stuff. It's important. You're not leaving a job. You're leaving a culture. You're leaving a culture. You're leaving a life. But that said, it is a chapter in a book that is going to be filled with stuff. It is not your whole life. Don't look yourself in the mirror and be like, life is over because I'm taking this uniform. Nah, that's not the way that it works. I guarantee you, as time goes on, because I'm 5 years out from retiring, it gets easier and easier. I finally do go back on bases now. And I like when the gate guard's like, hoorah, Colonel, come on through. And I'm still part of the family. You're still going to be part of the family, but it does take time. Come on out here into the world, try life on, try different things. You don't have to follow status quo of everybody going into the contracting world. Find what makes you happy and just do it and course correct along the way.
Well, you're inspiration to both of us. Thanks for what you do, the stuff that you put out into the world, the way you help other people. And for those listening to this podcast, stop listening. Go try life on. Thanks, Maurice.
Perfect. My pleasure, man. Thank you.
This has
I
been
love
great.
that. And if you're ever in Hawaii, let me know.
I will, brother. I will.
I'll take you up on that lunch. We'll go chat a little bit more in depth.
Noted. My pleasure.
Well, thank you so much.
Awesome, man. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Veteran Ventures podcast. If you heard something interesting or found the show to be helpful, send it to a friend who is transitioning out of the military or considering a transition. We'd also really appreciate if you left a rating and review of the show. That helps us reach more people with these amazing stories of successful veterans. We'll catch you next time on the Veteran Ventures podcast. And until then, go do the thing. Make that decision, have that conversation, and go find your next mission.
Hey guys, this is Maurice, host of the Try Life On podcast, and thank you for listening to another episode. I hope you are finding it useful in helping you design your own lifestyle that you don't need a vacation from. If that's the case, please consider dropping a review for me, whether in Apple, iTunes, or in Spotify. Drop a review, put some stars on it, give me some feedback on how I can make the podcast better, what information you are looking for. I am doing my best to get information to you on the Try Life On principles, the 5 freedoms, how to build lifestyle, travel hacking, all of it. And I want to do it for you. So please do a review for me. And until next time, my name is Maurice Philogene, and this is the Try Life On podcast. Peace.